Over the years, when I conduct a workshop or anything that focuses on creating an effective learning environment, I will often start with a discussion about who do you remember from your childhood as an instructor that had made an impact on your life. And when I get my workshop participants to share the results, more often than not, most people remember an instructor who actually cared about them, had an impact on their life, took an interest in them. And if you were to ask them some details about what subject they took from that instructor, they might not have those details, but they will remember a lot more of the details about how that instructor had an impact on their lives. I too recall some key instructors that had an impact on my life. I actually dropped out of high school and spent almost a dozen years, 10 plus years, exploring the world and doing a wide assortment of things. And at a certain point, I decided to go back to school and explore some other avenues. And when I had done some upgrading to be able to get into university, and I finally went to university, one of my first experiences in university was with a philosophy professor who had a huge impact on my life. And I have to share a little bit of the story to give you the context. One of the first things that Dr. Caldwell shared with all of us when we attended his class is that he stressed the importance of punctuality. He said that he would have a 5-minute grace period where he would allow people to enter the class. But anything beyond that 5-minute grace period, the door would be closed and he would not allow you to enter because he didn't want to interrupt the flow or the learning environment that he had established, because it wouldn't be fair to the rest of the class. And so if you're more than 5 minutes late, you would have to get the notes or something from somebody else. And he said, so our classes are starting at 1:05, and so you've got until 1:10, and anything beyond that, you're going to be late. Now, when he had mentioned that, I immediately thought, our class actually starts at 1:10, but I looked around the room, and I hadn't been in school for a while, hadn't been at university. I was an adult student, very different context from many of the other students. And so I didn't say anything, but I kept it in mind that the class was really starting at 1:10. It didn't really matter that much to me. I had a bit of time before that class, so I could come a little bit earlier. It wasn't really a problem. And so class went on for a couple of weeks and nobody had said anything. We automatically shifted to a 5-minute earlier starting time without anybody commenting on it. Guess what? One day I ran into a bit of a difficulty with the administration and I saw that I was going to be late. But I also remembered the class actually starts at 1:10, and so the true grace period would be 1:15. And so I went up to the classroom, and sure enough, the door was closed, but I knocked on the door. And there was a window on the door, and I kind of leaned over, and Dr. Caldwell could see me, and he pointed at his watch and shook his head, and I knocked on the door again. And he pointed to his watch again and shook his head, and I knocked on the door even harder. I was getting a little bit annoyed, and I was trying to control myself. So when Dr. Caldwell finally came to the door to get me to stop banging on it, he cracked it open a little bit and he said, "I'm sorry, you're disrupting the class. You're past the 5-minute grace period. You're going to have to, get the notes from somebody else." And I said, "Actually, you've made a mistake. The class starts at 1:10, not 1:05, and I'm well within that 5-minute grace period. I'm coming in." There was a pause, and in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, what are you going to do? Are you going to push your way in? I had a bit of a history of being somewhat of an aggressive person, and needless to say, thoughts of me foolishly doing something I would regret and then having to leave university were flashing through my mind as Dr. Caldwell was pausing. He then said to me, he says, "You know what? Let's go check this out." And he opened the door and he said, "Follow me." We went down to his office, which was down the stairs. He opened up the door, went in, took a look at the actual schedule, looked at it, and he looked up to me. He says, "Yes, you're right. I apologize. Let's get back to work." That was a turning point. This gentleman, who was in a position of authority, trusted me enough to check out what I had to say. And when he was wrong, he says, "Yes, you're right. I apologize. Let's get back to work." It let me know that it's okay to make a mistake and it's okay to apologize. And this is a person that I could learn from. So, Dr. Caldwell had a huge impact on my life that particular day. I listened to everything he said and I hung on every word, and it was really quite a starting point for me. There was one other thing that he did that annoyed me, but I never did raise this, and that was when a person would answer a question that he posed to the class with an obviously foolish answer, he would say something along the lines, and I remember he'd take off his glasses and tap his chin and say, "That is an interesting answer. Maybe to this type of a question over here. I'm not sure if it really applies to what we're talking about, but it is interesting and I see the merit." In my mind, I'm saying to myself, just tell him that he's wrong. Well, it didn't really dawn on me how significant it was for Dr. Caldwell to encourage everybody to participate. And it wasn't until I, really started studying learning and became an instructor in a more significant way myself that I started to realize that as an instructor, we have an impact on how we can encourage or discourage our learners from participating in the class discussion. And if we embrace our students and encourage them to contribute, even if they are wrong, and try to find merit even in that wrong answer, it goes a long way to let everybody know that their voice is important and you are important to the class and you should be heard. That was an important lesson I had observed, but it didn't really dawn on me until a little bit later. Now, my experiences with Dr. Caldwell in that philosophy class go back to the late 80s, early 90s, and so that's a fair time ago. A little bit more recently, probably about in the mid-2010s, I was watching a Ken Robinson video. And in that video, I believe it's the one where he talked about a learning revolution. He shared a Yeats poem, and the last 3 lines of the Yeats poem struck me, and they really had an impact on me. And the poem itself was where Yeats was saying, "If I had the world to share beneath your feet, I would, but because I'm poor," or here's the actual last 3 lines, "but I, being poor, have only my dreams. I have spread my dreams under your feet. Tread softly, because you tread on my dreams." Robinson made a connection between this poem and the fact as educators, as teachers, as facilitators, our learners come into our learning environments and they lay out their dreams at our feet. And we have to tread carefully that we are not crushing their dreams. We need to tread softly. It really struck me how important it is that we encourage and we help these learners achieve their dreams. We play a significant role. We can be positive or we can be negative. So this is an important part of providing Feed Forward. Our learners are coming to us with dreams, with hopes, with goals, and we have the opportunity to build them up and to encourage them to pursue those dreams. And if we're not careful, we can actually crush those dreams. So this is extremely important for us to remember. So Feed Forward is something that I have adopted in a very significant way to ensure that I am encouraging those people to pursue their dreams. It's extremely important for all of us to remember our Feed Forward can change lives. And I've incorporated a process of Feed Forward where I identify 2 key factors: what worked and what can you do better. The what worked is really a matter of acknowledging what the learner has done well, what they've accomplished, what is working. Most of the work that my students do is done within a context of an actual real-world project. So they're working on something, they're building something, they're creating something, they're building part of a plan, whether it's an organizational change strategy, an innovation plan, whatever the case may be. It's something that they are actually going to implement. So when they share that organizational change strategy with me, I can take a look at key components of it and point out what's working and what isn't. And after I provide an overview and encouragement on what's working, I then will say something along the lines, my job is to help you be successful. And I immediately follow that with saying, now, remember, with this organizational change strategy, your audience is going to have apprehension. And by phrasing this in a way that might be a little bit too straightforward, might be discouraging them. They're already a little bit apprehensive. You don't want to use a term like disruptive innovation because they're already disruptive and you don't want to disrupt them more. You can just focus on innovation. So be careful about the terminology. So whatever feed forward I provide is done so within the context of what they're going to be sharing with their audience or in the context of what they're going to be doing. So if you create a learning environment where you use authentic learning opportunities and you give your learners choice, ownership, and voice through those authentic learning opportunities, well, then you can provide feed forward that will help your learner to recognize this is something that I need to do to be able to reach my audience in a more effective way. So your feed forward is not what they've done wrong, it's how can they be more effective in addressing what they're doing. How can they be more effective with the goals and hopes and dreams that they've laid before you? So you have that opportunity to make that significant difference. And it's really important. If you create the correct context with exposing your learners to the learner's mindset and growth mindset thinking, if they recognize how important it is for them to become self-assessors, and then if you can give them that feed forward that allows them to build on that foundation, it's exciting to see what can potentially happen. It's really important that you remember your feed forward has the opportunity to influence your students' lives. Remember, they've come into your learning environment with their hopes, their dreams. They've laid them before you in that particular assignment, and they're sharing with you what they hope to be able to accomplish. You have that opportunity to help them achieve that goal, to achieve that dream, and make a difference in their lives. And maybe one day you'll be that instructor that they remember that made a difference in their lives, and they will contact you down the road and say, guess what, Dr. H, look at what I'm doing now. Dr. H, remember that class where you encouraged me to go down this path? Well, guess what? Look at what I'm doing now. That's one of the most exciting aspects about being an educator, is having a learner come back to you years after the fact and say, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for listening to me. Thank you for encouraging me to do that. Thank you for encouraging me to make that difference. Thank you for encouraging me to fix that. Because of that encouragement, now look at what I'm able to do. This is the power of Feed Forward. And this is the difference that we can make in our learners' lives. And this goes a long way to changing the world, one learner at a time.